BioCentury This Week is brought to you by Jeito Capital, a leading global independent private equity fund with a patient benefit-driven approach aimed at financing and accelerating the development of groundbreaking medical innovation. Jeito's unique investment strategy combines significant capital and collective expertise to support companies and their management teams, ranging from clinical development to market access for cutting-edge innovations, with one main objective: go faster for the patient. Learn more at jeito.life.
Ahead of this week's ASCO meeting, Dutch biotech Merus has emerged as a standout with positive phase 2 data from its EGFR LGR5 bispecific antibody. The candidate has caught biotech investors' attention for going after cancer stem cell marker LGR5 as a new way to block EGFR signaling. We'll take a look at Merus's program as we preview this year's annual American Society of Clinical Oncology meeting in Chicago. And we'll discuss the patient death in Rocket's gene therapy trial. Plus, is cancer target EpCAM poised for revival? And speaking of revivals, what is going on with the Hong Kong stock market and biotech listings? We'll discuss all of that and more on this week's BioCentury This Week podcast. I'm Jeff Cranmer, and joining me today on the BioCentury podcast are my colleagues
Simone Fishburne, Editor-in-Chief.
Selena Koch, Executive Editor.
Lauren Martz, Executive Director of Biopharma Intelligence.
ASCO kicks off Friday. We'll dig into that in a moment. But right after ASCO, in the same charming city of Chicago, BioCentury is kicking off our second annual Grand Rounds R&D conference. Come for the oncology breakthroughs at ASCO and stick around for Grand Rounds. It's our annual Geek Fest. Simone, you're getting fired up for it. I know Selena's going as well. What do you got to say, Simone? Any big people you're going to be chatting with on the stage?
Yeah, we really have a great lineup. Want to emphasize a couple of things about this meeting. It brings together emerging academics and entrepreneurs together with VCs and farmers and biotech leaders. So we are as excited about next generation talent as we are about, what do we call it? Existing talent. Recognized talent, the people who've already climbed to the top of the mountain. And on that front, I will call out a couple of sessions and then hand off to Selena to maybe talk about a couple of her favorite sessions. I will be conducting a fireside chat with Jonathan Sedgwick, who is the SVP of Discovery at AbbVie, of course, a local hometown pharma there. You know, he's really got interesting things to say about where innovation is going, and that's going to be an interesting discussion. We also have a really interesting opening keynote session with a talk by Marty Burke, who is a professor at chemical innovation at UIUC. He's pretty well known among the VC circles. He's a great innovator, really interesting talk, and he's got a great title for his talk, which is Imagine a World Where Anyone Can Make Molecules. So I'm very excited to hear that. And Selena, what are the sessions that you're looking at?
Well, I think all of the sections are going to be very interesting myself. Let's see. So how do you pick your favorite child?
Speak somebody with multiple children, right? Yeah.
Maybe I'll just talk about a couple that I'm involved with. So we have one on what is incretin biology and the obesity revolution, basically teaching us about other aspects of human biology, where we're going to be kind of looking across a number of different disease areas and saying, well, what have we learned? What are the hypotheses? What is bearing out? And then an area that I've been watching that seems to be gaining a lot of traction is fixing this long-standing challenge of the difficulty of delivering drugs to the brain. So I'll be moderating a panel on different blood-brain barrier penetrating technologies, how they can, the considerations for getting different modalities across the blood-brain barrier, whether it's gene therapy, ASOs, protein-based therapies. So that'll be an interesting one. The implications there are big.
So Lauren, I just want to point out that unfortunately Lauren can't join us, but she's also one of the big architects of this. Lauren, what are the interesting scientific questions that you're looking at that a feature at the meeting?
Unfortunately, I can't be there, but I'm excited about the immune tolerization discussion that we'll have during one of the panels. This is the idea that we can extend the sort of the immune resetting effects that we're seeing with B cell depletion to maybe other autoimmune diseases, and the early work that's going there into changing the T cell profile in these diseases from inflammatory to maybe a tolerogenic approach. So I think that'll be an interesting discussion.
Well, I won't be at the conference either. Someone has to watch the store while Selena and Simone and KTT and wow, our newest member, Tierney, are off geeking out with this great group of participants. But once everything's up online, I will digitally be watching Lou Borio's session. She's ex-FDA. She's currently at Arch Venture Partners. Federal research funding is on the verge of collapse. Now what? Just a small topic that Dr. Borio will be delving into, but she is always great, very, very deep knowledge of vaccine space, and has worked in and out of the government, so that will be a great session too. And hey, if you're going to ASCO, stick around for grand rounds. See, we don't just do oncology, we do other stuff too, so it's going to be a great meeting. There are still tickets, you can register. And we do have a couple of presenting company slots. The presenting company list, I curate that along with Simone and Karen Tkach-Tusman. And we have some really great early stage companies from Chicagoland and elsewhere around the US. Okay, let's dig on into what is going to be happening at ASCO. Lauren kicks off Friday. You've been going through the abstracts, which came out late last week. I know you've been thinking through some of the late breakers that are going to be happening. What are you looking forward to at the meeting?
Thanks, Jeff. So among the late breakers, which again, we have all of the abstracts, they came out last Thursday. So we've spent some time going through those and looking for trends. We're also looking forward to the late breakers that will come out as the presentations happen starting on Friday. 3 themes in the late breakers that I think are interesting are gastrointestinal cancers, ADCs, and oral selective estrogen receptor degraders. These are sort of the big themes this year. In GI cancers, there's a lot of attention around the Matterhorn study, which will test Imfinzi from AstraZeneca as adjuvant and neoadjuvant therapy for gastric cancers. There's also the ATOMIC study, which will test Tecentriq as adjuvant therapy in dMMR colorectal cancer. I think a lot of people are watching Destiny Breast 09 results. This would bring Enhertu into the first line setting for HER2 positive breast cancer. And then we'll also see phase 3 data from AstraZeneca's oral SERD camizestrant, which a lot of people have been watching, in addition to phase 3 data for Arvinas's PROTAC therapy.
It's quite a list, Lauren, but you chose last week to focus on Maris's data. What caught your eye?
I think last week the Maris data was the big stock winner among the companies that released data ahead of ASCO. So this is a program that also had positive results last week, as you mentioned earlier. It's an EGFR by LGR5 bispecific that's in development. These results were from a phase 2 head and neck cancer study. It's in development for some other indications as well. But the idea here is that this may be a different mechanism for blocking EGFR signaling. We have the EGFR inhibitors, you have MABs against the target. We do have bispecific against EGFR, and in a lot of cases, those are designed to sort of head off resistance by targeting resistance pathways. When I spoke with the company earlier this year, they explained the idea behind this bispecific design, which is that when an antibody binds LGR5, the receptor and the antibody tend to internalize much more efficiently than an antibody binding EGFR. So when it's internalized, it can be degraded. The idea here is that an antibody that's binding both targets can therefore be internalized and EGFR can be degraded. So this is a different way of blocking this target that's, notorious for different resistance mechanisms. At the meeting, the MIRAS showed that there was an ORR of 60%, 5% complete response rate, and almost 80% of patients were alive at 12 months, which is an improvement over the data that were released last year. I think there was also a little bit of comparison in the abstract results with some data that came from Bicara last week too. That company has an antibody fusion protein that targets EGFR and TGF beta. And the results there were also, I think, quite strong in the head and neck cancer indication, but maybe not quite as impressive as what was seen with the MIRAS data. It was 65% of patients survived at 12 months. ORR was 54%. So again, just a bit lower than what was seen for MIRAS.
In your very nice story on this, Lauren, you indicated that this is the only bispecific targeting LGR5 that's in the clinic. So what do you think? Do you think this data is going to cause sort of a maybe not a rush, but other companies to go after it? I don't know if there were any preclinical, by the way, when you said that, but what you talked about seems to be a mechanism that should be applicable to other bispecifics. So what do you think that this means, and how people look at this data?
Actually not sure what the response to this will be. So obviously this has gotten a lot of attention this year. It got a lot of attention last year. LGR5, it's considered a cancer stem cell target. It's also just a stem cell target. So I think there's a little bit of a challenge in targeting this in a way that's safe. It's something that happens to be expressed on certain cancer types. I don't know that it's expressed on all cancer types. So, but it is an interesting idea. I think, if this is working the way that MIRAS believes that it's working by, sort of being an internalization vehicle for EGFR. I wonder if this is a different way to think about designing bispecifics, and if that's something we'll see, using one of the targets as a way to promote degradation of another target like this. Yeah.
And between the two of them, it's also a tumor localization benefit.
It should be, yeah.
Yeah.
They're both overexpressed on certain cancers. So there's that too.
So
yeah.
for bispecifics, maybe we'll see more because you get around that like targeting of other types of stem cells thing, hopefully.
Yeah, and we have seen quite a lot of growth in the EGFR bispecifics pipeline in general. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more against this target come up.
All right, Lauren, thanks for that. Looking forward to a busy few days with the news flow out of ASCO. We'll be taking a quick break. You can hear a little bit more about Grand Rounds, and then we'll be back to talk EpCAM and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange.
BioCentury This Week is brought to you by BioCentury Grand Rounds. Grand Rounds. BioCentury's R&D conference will return in 2025 to the US and Europe to debate key bottlenecks in translation and unlock scientific breakthroughs with commercial potential. Connect with VCs, academic innovators, and biopharma R&D and BD leaders to explore cutting-edge advancements in early-stage R&D as we dive into disease biology, therapeutic modalities, and enabling technologies. Join us in Chicago this June after ASCO for the second BioCentury Grand Rounds US, and in Cambridge, UK this September for the inaugural Grand Rounds Europe. Register and learn more at biocenturygrandraunds.com.
All right, we are back, and Simone, do we have your full attention, or might there be a something on in the background of your computer? It is that time of the summer.
Well, as we speak, Jeff, it's not on my computer because that would be wrong, but I won't deny that my phone is informing me that Jack Draper as well, it's maybe a little bit jinxing it to say, but he's looking like in a good place to make it through the first round. at Roland Garros, also known as the French Open. And it's been a good day for the Brits, I want to tell you, a good couple of days. Emma Raducanu yesterday, a couple of others today, and a great win by Cameron Norrie over Medvedev. But of course, that's not the big news. The big news was this tremendous send-off for Rafa that they had.
Oh,
but
brilliant.
yeah.
So I
really
shouldn't
feel
have
like
bet on
biotech should be
Rafa,
doing
but
send-offs like this, sort of having the 4 big ones as someone goes off and everybody's like good friends with each other. And, then they kind of leave a little footprint in the Tel Batu, which is the sort of dust or whatever it is that is the surface at the French Open. I feel like biotech could learn a few things about some celebrations.
Yeah, well, we certainly could. You failed to mention the biggest British tennis victory of late, though, Simone. Andy Murray. Wonderful work. Your arch nemesis, Mr. Djokovic.
For months, Murray did sterling work, as Djokovic's coach, taking him to loss after loss after loss. And then when he stepped back from coaching him, Djokovic won a tournament. But still, we'll see.
You can't stop the man. You can slow him though. And a quick shout out for Coco Gauff. She's my number one. So hopefully she does it this year, though. That ego woman, she's a handful. All right, EpCAM. I know that's what you really wanted to hear us talk about, but I can never resist when one of the majors is on. Our esteemed tennis expert Simone always has plenty of thoughts. So we had one of the first bylines of the newest member of BioCentury's editorial team, Tierney Baum, who has opened up our North Carolina bureau, and she took a look at cancer target EpCAM. Selena, you edited the piece. What did you learn?
Yeah, so EpCAM means epithelial cell adhesion molecule. That's what it stands for. It's a long-standing cancer target, and it's one of these targets I think has a neat story in just that it's been super long and kind of rocky. 15 years ago, there was a drug against EpCAM, was a bispecific called catamaximab that got approved, and can you think of it? It's a T-cell engaging bispecific, and it's like a similar vintage as Blincyto, which is probably a name that more people recognize. Right, and both of them came onto the market, although catamaximab in Europe, and had some difficulties, as early drugs in a new modality often do. And both of their cases, it was related to delivery. But now, whereas Blincyto's targets are CD3 and CD19, which everybody recognizes, CD19 has gone on to be the basis of many therapies, not just in bispecifics. On the catamaximab side, CD3 and EpCAM has not gotten the same kind of traction, right? But here we have now at least 7 programs in the clinic, according to our BCIQ database, at least. And 2 weeks ago, there was some data from an antibody drug conjugate. So the first antibody drug conjugate against this target, and it sparked a bunch of fresh optimism. Now it's early, it's phase 1 data, but it looks like, yeah, this target could be seeing some more activity.
So, Selena, I know that the initial one didn't do great on the market, and it was also delivered intraperitoneally, which is a pretty odd way, actually, of delivering drugs. I know that we used to do that in mice, and my boss would always say, nobody gives drugs IP, so why do you test them in mice that way? So here are 2 drugs in the pipeline that are given IP, but how is the pipeline differentiating from that first mover product from Lindis?
Yeah. Well, okay, so the pipeline is still small and it's still mostly early stage and weighted towards bispecifics. But some of the bispecifics think that they have more specificity for the tumor and can be delivered systemically. But I think this is why there's so much kind of new optimism around the ADC, because the ADC has a masking technology. So that's kind of a new way companies are trying to get better tumor specificity in general with the modality of ADCs. It keeps them inactive and masked while they're in circulation, and then there's an unmasking that happens in the tumor.
So the conditionally active masking biologics technology is something that we're following a lot. CytomX isn't the only company in this pipeline that's using a masking technology. We know that BioAtla also has a bispecific that is masked. So again, if you can deliver that systemically, you can get to other tissues that you couldn't with IP administration. And then just a side note, that's something else that we're watching at ASCO. Adagene had some really positive data for a masked mAb targeting CTLA4. So, this is just a new version of the next generation antibody technologies that we're following closely.
Excellent. And some big news out of Rocket today, a patient death in a trial of the company's gene therapy for Danon disease. Obviously, we always hate to see this. It was a serious adverse event that involved complications related to a capillary leak syndrome. And, well, what do we know, Selena?
Well, everything is hypothesis right now, speculation, but the company, its leading hypothesis for this is that they recently added kind of a fourth leg to their preconditioning regimen, which was a complement 3 inhibitor because these patients had shown some complement activity, and they really wanted to tamp that down, maybe ironically for the purposes of safety. As it turned out, it wasn't that safe, or it may not have been that safe. It's something that they are, investigating. But the 2 patients that got this C3 inhibitor as part of the mix in the preconditioning both had capillary leak syndrome. One of them died. They didn't die directly from that. They died from an infection. Maybe just having blood leaking out of your capillaries makes you less resilient to infection. I'm not sure. Or maybe there's something else going on.
Lauren, any thoughts here? You follow gene therapy quite closely for BioCentury. What's your take?
Yeah, so this is really unfortunate, and it's not the first time that we've seen, an adverse event, a patient death that's been linked to an inflammatory response. So it's also the company talked on the call a little bit today about how certain mutations may be more susceptible to the kind of inflammatory reaction that would eventually lead to this capillary leak syndrome or the consequences of having a C3 inhibitor. And we've seen this before. We saw this with the Duchenne muscular dystrophy gene therapies where patients with certain mutations had anti-transgene immune responses. I think it just raises the question of, I think it raises the issue that treating genetic diseases with inflammatory components is very complex. The different types of inflammatory responses may occur when an AAV gene therapy is delivered to the liver.
So I think you're saying like the immune system is very complex. Different diseases have different types of immune mechanisms going on in them, and how those interface with an individual gene therapy and preconditioning regimen is not always that predictable from the beginning.
Exactly. That's the impression I get from this. I also think that we're just seeing more and more anti-inflammatory therapies that are being added to these AAV protocols to try to, prevent some of the inflammatory toxicities that you see after you deliver one of these, especially as we're thinking about things like redosing or treating patients who have pre-existing antibodies. And so it's a setback, and I think it means that every case is going to be different. I think applying platform type technology pathways is going to be complicated because every gene therapy is very different.
Yeah, in terms of like you said, piling on the molecules for preconditioning, I think this one was steroids, rituximab, sirolimus, and then the C3. But yeah, that if all of these need to be kind of tailored and bespoke and trial and error, it does make this concept of a platform designation, as FDA was proposing it, looking a little bit hard to reduce to practice, maybe.
And Rocket stock down 60% so far on Monday. We'll obviously be watching this story. We certainly wish Rocket well in trying to figure out what occurred here. And the CEO did, of course, issue a statement saying, "We are heartbroken by this loss and are fully committed to our mission to develop gene therapies that address the underlying cause of devastating diseases like Danon." And Dr. Shah expressed his gratitude for the patients and families participating in the trial. So I felt it was important to include that statement there. Let's turn to the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. We've been following this fairly closely at BioCentury. A couple of years ago, launched a biotech chapter that attracted a lot of biotech startups, helped them raise money. Liquidity's always been a bit of a problem for the biotechs on the Hong Kong exchange. NASDAQ, of course, pretty quiet this year, but Hong Kong all of a sudden, it's starting to happen. And last week, one of China's largest biopharma companies, Jiangsu Hengrui, which of course is from Jiangsu province, priced its Hong Kong listing to raise nearly 10 billion Hong Kong dollars. That's about 1.3 billion US. That's one of the very few former generics companies that has turned into a global innovator. And it is part of what we're seeing, a wave of established mainland China companies that are now seeking secondary listings on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. We also had a Singapore company, cancer diagnostics developer, Merxes, raised 1.1 billion Hong Kong dollars on the Hong Kong Exchange. And as recent, it's interesting that Merxes chose Hong Kong over, say, NASDAQ. It wasn't that long ago, maybe March, when I was in Singapore talking to some bankers and investors and CFOs. They were telling me at that time that NASDAQ was the only market that Asia's biotech should bother considering when going public. And we had another company get out today, the second company on the 18A biotech chapter. Peg Bio got out. Its stock is down quite a bit today, but hey, it got out. And next up, Simone, our old pal at In Silico Medicine, is looking for its turn to get out on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. In Silico, of course, the high-profile AI drug developer.
Yeah, I think one thing you mentioned earlier that is interesting is that historically trading volumes have been kind of low on the Hong Kong exchange, right? And that's been an impediment. But then anecdotally, we've heard from sources that that's gotten a little better recently. But we wanted to see, is it specifically getting better for biotechs on Chapter 18A? And so we're in the process of doing that analysis, and you will see the results very shortly.
Yep, we're going to get that out today. I believe it's waiting in our inbox, Selena, for editing. And not to be outdone, NASDAQ did have one company file to go public late on Friday, Keris. So we will keep an eye on that, see how that goes. What I've been hearing is maybe a little bit later this year, next year, things will ease up. I mean, we're seeing companies that otherwise you'd think would go out, like Four, just raised a Series D2 round to get to its next set of milestones for its BRAF inhibitor. That company has really just headline after headline name among its investors: Wellington, HBM, Cormorant, Orbimed, quite a few. So normal times, you'd expect a company like that to maybe get out after a Series C, but not in this market. Okay, well, that is our show for today. Selena and Simone, I wish you good luck in prepping for all those interesting Grand Rounds panels. Very excited for the conference to kick off next week. And Lauren, thanks for joining us, and good luck surviving all of this ASCO stuff you are going through. I know you are not alone. Everyone feels that way when they're grappling with the beast that is ASCO, but hopefully we see some more awesome breakthroughs. I know you're going to do a first in human analysis as well for us, Lauren. That'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. Also on biocentury.com, we talked about it last week, but if you missed it, check out Selena's editor's commentary. Can Europe step up if US drug pricing cracks? She takes a look at whether the fragmented systems limiting Europe's launch appeal will hold its back, or whether some targeted regional actions could strengthen Europe's position and help preserve access to innovation. Also coming up on BioCentury's sister podcast, Simone sits down with Tim Oppler for a really great conversation. We've just recorded it. We'll release it on Thursday. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to the BioCentury This Week podcast. And a hat tip to our production manager today, Alana Farrow. And as always, we would like to thank Kendall Square Orchestra for providing the music for BioCentury this week.
BioCentury would like to thank Jeito Capital for its continued support of our BioCentury This Week podcast.